Well, welcome this afternoon. I understand that we have 350 roughly people online joining us today, which is great to hear. I was actually a little shocked at that number. So it looks like we have about 250 or 75 here at East Campus at the Union. So we're very pleased at the turnout that we have participating with us this afternoon. And I know that there will be opportunity for folks who can't be with us either on the live web stream or here on campus to look at this later. It will be archived for folks to be able to study closer. And as you'll see today, I'm going to go through a lot with you. In fact, we've been kidding amongst those of us that have been working on this the last couple of weeks that I'm breaking every communication rule that there is because I have about 100 slides to get through in 45 minutes. So as we get to various points of this, you will hear me say things like the next 15 slides are going to give you a general impression of, and you'll get the idea. But we do have a lot to share with you this afternoon. There's a lot happening in the Institute. It's an exciting time to be here, an exciting time in our history. And hopefully you'll walk away in this update session with a better feel of where we are in that process, a better feel for where we're going moving forward, especially, and I'm going to emphasize for you and challenge you here at the front end to think about the next 4 or 5 months. Because this summer, as you will see later in the slides, we're going to be making some very big decisions in the Institute about how we move forward with resources, how we move forward with new positions, how we move forward in prioritizing a lot of things that we do. And you'll hear more about that process and how we'll be doing that during the discussion this afternoon. Now, you will have noticed the slide that's been up here as the title slide has 2 dates on it. We've been talking about IANR to 2025, and this process that we unfolded, I think in a session like this about a year ago, in January of 2010, you'll notice the slide now says IANR to 2017 and then to 2025 because of the Chancellor's goals for the university. And we'll talk a lot about that in the latter part of the presentation this afternoon, both the near term, the next 5 years, and the longer term out beyond that. So what we'll do in the next hour is walk through a little bit of, again, updating since the last time we had an opportunity to have a conversation like this, last September, if you remember. So it's been about 6 months. What's happened in that 6 months of time? What are some of the things on the radar screen that we're paying attention to? And what does that mean for us, or what changes might have already occurred because of some of those things that have happened? I'll spend a little bit of time updating you on Innovation Campus. There are significant things happening there now and in the near term before we'll be back together again. So I want to talk to that point in some depth. We'll talk a little bit about the foundation and some things that are happening in the foundation that are good things for us, and some new goals that we've set with the foundation since last September. We'll certainly speak to and talk about the progress on the 2025 goals and the implementation steps that we rolled out last September, kind of where we are in that process and what we are expecting to happen this spring and into the summer. And then lastly, I want to talk about the Chancellor's goals, as I mentioned, and a little bit about continued ways that we can build additional community here on East Campus and across the campus more generally. So that's kind of where we're headed this afternoon. So fasten on your seatbelts, here we go. So what's happened since September? And you'll remember I started the September presentation in this similar kind of way. So financially, what's happened in our greater global environment? Well, the economy certainly is beginning to slowly, very slowly improve at a national level. Globally, it's a little scarier perhaps than it was when we were together in September. We have been buffered from that in Nebraska, I think, as we talked a little bit about in September. The ag economy here is robust. Other sectors of our economy are robust that has resulted in us being in a little bit of a bubble by comparison to most of our counterparts in the U.S. And if you've listened to the governor talk, he talks repeatedly about this, the unemployment rate here being amongst the lowest in the country. The only place that competes with us economically is North Dakota. And North Dakota's economy is certainly booming in a very different way than ours. It's booming from oil and gas in western North Dakota, as you know. So we have a little bit of an interesting bubble that we're living in here, based heavily on agriculture, as we talked about last time. We do continue to see escalating foundation resources. I'm going to give you some updates on that and what we think is contributing to that. Federal finances, I think we can expect to be largely on hold through this calendar year due to the election, and I don't expect that we're going to see much activity at all in terms of what happens in Washington until we know who the next president or whether we continue with the Obama administration or we have a new administration in Washington, D.C. At the state level, we also, for the most part, are in great shape. I mentioned to you last time that we're 21% state funded as a university campus here at UNL. At IANR, it's a little less than 50% of our funding comes from state appropriations and state dollars, so we are very tied to and very dependent, if you will, on the support of the people of the state of Nebraska. We're now in year 2 of the biennium, so last year was the budget setting year. The short session, this session that we're in now, is the off year in the budget, so we know what our budget is this year. We will be going into the 2013 to 2015 budget setting process starting this summer when we start to prepare for the legislature session next spring. This short session, we are in a legislative package, as you will have heard, that the university has put forward to the legislature for capital improvements, largely centered around what we're calling building a healthier Nebraska, where part of that is focused on meeting nursing shortage needs across the state of Nebraska, especially in the rural parts of the state. Part of it is based on desire to increase our cancer capacity at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and part of it based on the need for a new veterinary diagnostic center here on East Campus as part of our School of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. So the first 2 pieces of that, as I mentioned, the Cancer Center, a $50 million request to leverage against private fundraising of $320 million that would build a new cancer center at the Med Center in Omaha, $17 million for support of a new nursing facility here on East Campus. You will know and remember, I'm sure most of you will remember this is kind of a long-standing priority that the university has had in front of the legislature the last few sessions when they've been considering our requests. The third part of that is a new request on part of the university of $19 million to support a nursing center expansion on the Kearney campus at UNK, along with space for their School of Allied Health. They're currently housed in the West Building, if you know the Kearney campus, on the west side of the campus there. It's where the nursing program currently is headquartered. They're out of space just like the Lincoln facility and are requesting those kind of funds to build a new facility for UNK. And then of interest, particularly to us, is the need for a new veterinary diagnostic center. This has been a long-standing need at the Institute, as you know. We had an accreditation process here in 2007 where the diagnostic lab was granted provisional accreditation for a period of a year based on 2 concerns. One, the facility, saying that the facility needed to be either largely renovated or replaced due to concerns about cross-contamination and worker safety and biosecurity, or the other being quality control, flow of samples and some people issues that the diagnostic center fixed very quickly on the quality control side. The building side said that what we really need to do to address that long term is build a new facility. They looked at the existing facility built in 1975, said it would be much to the benefit to build a new facility. Initially, the proposal was just under $70 million. This was 3 years ago, Alan, I believe, when those estimates were made. And now we think we are in more like the $45 to $50 million category for construction of a new facility based on what we know today in order to make that happen. LB 1066 is the bill in front of the legislature currently. It's still in the Appropriations Committee along with the other 3 pieces of this initiative from the university, requesting $5 million for planning and design money to start that process toward building this new facility. This is where it would be located. So if you're thinking about the East Campus Loop here, the current veterinary diagnostic lab in the SVMBS facility. This is the Life Sciences Annex now, as we call it, that's in the process of renovation. This is where the new site would be for the Veterinary Diagnostic Center, just to the west of the Life Sciences Annex. It would look something like this in terms of architect renderings. So you can see in this diagram, this is the Life Sciences Annex. So this is the new facility and what kind of footprint it would have moving forward. If we are successful in gaining the $5 billion in planning and design funds, this would put us on track to be able to, by the next legislature, be thinking about what would be required to build the building and move toward trying to get a building built and opened in the most good set of terms by 2016. So that's the track that we hope to be on. Now I'm just going to underline here something that some of you may not remember if you're not tied to the vet program. The veterinary people certainly will remember it well, and our stakeholders in the state remember it very well, that we used to have 3 veterinary diagnostic labs, 2 outstate, 1 in Scottsbluff and North Platte, that were fell prey, if you will, to budget closures and budget reductions during the 2000s. And the promise that was made by the university when those closures were made was that we would always have a world-class facility in Lincoln for veterinary diagnostic services. So we're up against a challenge here to have that accredited facility as a state facility. The state uses that facility, the Game and Parks Commission, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health and Human Services, to be able to meet that state need, which is the reason we're asking for the state support in order to move it forward. While we're talking about capital improvements, I just wanted to point out that we have a number of those that have occurred or are occurring or are being considered, that need to be addressed. And I've circled where those are. So certainly here on campus, the continuing of the renovation of Entomology Hall that I understand, Gary, is just about done, like Ag Hall is just about done since we started in August, if you've been in my office. And we'll leave that there. And certainly Ruth Staples, Animal Science is now done from its HVAC renovation. We have a lot of activity that has happened here on top of KIME and all of the renovations that have happened in recent years. We also have quite a bit of building that's happened at North Platte, at the West Central Research and Extension Center, with a new wind tunnel there, with a new educational facility attached to the headquarters building that we got the luxury of using last summer for our retreat, and now a feed efficiency facility for research that is underway as well. We do have needs at Panhandle, at Scottsbluff. The facility that we have there is in need of some capital improvement. On the HVAC side, some general maintenance work that we need to do there, and we're scoping how we will do that in the coming near term. And at Curtis, at the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture, our 2-year program there, there's a new skyline in Curtis. Curtis, as you may or may not know, is a fairly small rural town south of North Platte. There are 4 new facilities on the Curtis campus for the biggest growth of that campus in many, many, many years. This is the biggest one of those, a new education center that was dedicated in November and put into use now in this semester, along with a new veterinary teaching addition and hospital that is operating there, along with a new biomass facility that is using red cedars from rangeland as the feedstock source for energy for the campus, along with a new dormitory for students. So it's a huge capital project there, about $15 million of capital improvement at Curtis that was badly needed. Now with 600 student capacity, which is quite a bit different than about the 325 that they have had or have been running over time. Now I'm just going to speak to the federal issues very briefly. I showed you these numbers in September. These are the federal formula funds that we receive for Smith-Lever and Extension, for Hatch Act and Experiment Station, McIntyre-Stennis in forestry. And you can see in the right there the percentage of our budgets in those divisions that those federal funds make up on an annual basis. And if you'll recall what I said to you in September is we were quite concerned about these because the federal funds look like they're on the decline in Washington, and there was considerable discussion about whether they would be cut substantially this year in the current fiscal year debate. That didn't happen. And I have to tell you, I was shocked when it didn't happen. I assumed that we were going to get some substantive cuts federally, and it didn't happen. I think that was politics at its best, if you will, in the fact that Washington did nothing on it. We cannot expect that to happen in the future. It's just not going to be that way long term, where these funds will be maintained long term. So we've got a plan for that, as I told you before, and we're certainly doing that. The competitive funds in AFRI also maintained at about the same level, and I expect that's what we'll see again this year, given the election year, as I mentioned. Now, I threw this slide in there just to make a point. This is an op-ed piece that Bill Gates put out here in the last few weeks in his annual report for the Gates Foundation, where he makes a huge point in that annual report about how underfunded agricultural research is globally in order to meet the challenges that are out there. Now, we as the choir here know that and have known that for a long time. But I think it's beginning to be recognized in Washington. For example, next week, the President has called in 12 members of his PCAST team, the President's Council on Science and Technology, members of the National Academy of Sciences, to come in and advise him on what should be done about agricultural research. That hasn't happened in the last 4 presidential terms. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. Now, we have a person that's going to be representing us there that I talked to last week, and I can tell you probably one of the biggest things that will be discussed is whether the ag research enterprise within USDA works or doesn't. Whether it's really recognized as a science agency or not. Now, those are big comments and big questions. I realize that. I don't say that lightly. So there's concern about maybe we should move ag research to NSF. Maybe we should elevate the stature of ag research to make it counter with the other areas that we invest in more heavily. So those discussions are occurring, and I'm really pleased to see, frankly, that they're occurring at that level. Here's where we are in terms of external grants and contracts. So given the federal picture, where are we this year? Since July of 2011, so the first 6 months roughly of our fiscal year, we're at about 25% year over year where we were last year. And that is the result of a couple very large grants. And you will have heard about some of those the last few weeks, like this one, the group that received the USDA STEC grant on E. coli, Shiga toxin E. coli. I know Tipperetti's here. I don't know if Jim Keene's here. Rod Moxley, that team from our campus along with Kansas State University, huge accomplishment on a huge problem in the livestock industry and particularly in the beef industry. So we're very, very congratulate you guys for what you've done and what we look forward to in that 5-year project. Here is, just to give you some context, the grants that have been received by IANR faculty in excess of $500,000 during this reporting period. And I think it's important for you to see these kinds of things, see where they're coming from. And what I'm pleased to see, if you look on the far right-hand side, is the source of the funds. Far left-hand side is the amount. Prem tells me to always put the dollar amount first. I'm not sure I agree with that. But you get the picture. There's some huge grants up here that are working on huge problems. They are a short list of the grants we received. There are a lot underneath here of successful faculty and successful teams that are generating external support for their work. I also want to point out a group that is an ancillary group to us here. This is the Fish and Wildlife Co-op Research Unit that is over in SNR and affiliated with USGS primarily. They are a hugely successful grant group. This is this past year, and they do this year in and year out, over and over again, even at greater levels than you see here. And I just wanted to congratulate Craig and his group for what they do. I know they're not teaching faculty, they're not research extension faculty, they're full-time researchers, but it's an example of a great partnership that we have, and I applaud them for what they're doing. Now let's talk about Innovation Campus a little bit. The main thing that has happened in Innovation Campus is that the phase 1 design is finished and this guy's in charge. Okay? So all questions on Innovation Campus henceforth go to Dan Duncan, we're tremendously pleased that Dan's the new executive director, not so new anymore, since October, of Innovation Campus. He's doing a great job for us. I serve on the Innovation Campus board, and he's been well received by that board, and there's a lot of plans that have already happened as a result of his leadership. You know the food, fuel, and water theme. It's great to have someone like Dan in that position who understands those things and understands what Innovation Campus can deliver in those areas. I showed you this slide last time. This is the full build-out plan for the Old State Fairgrounds campus, where we're now focused on this specific part of that build-out for phase 1. Now, what is different than what I talked about last time was I showed you this last time, if I remember correctly. The 4-H building that was the retained facility from the State Fairgrounds to be renovated into an anchor facility for conferences, along with some tenant space in that facility. Attached to it, which it is here, was this companion building that would be attached to the existing 4-H building for space. Here's the new design in the last 6 months. And you will have seen renderings of this in the paper and other places when we made the announcements a few weeks ago, where the new design incorporates not only the 4-H building, which is here, so think of that as the far north side, with a life sciences building that connects to the existing industrial arts facility that is being renovated into a set of greenhouse space on the top floor, 17 feet off the ground, with all high bay space underneath it within the existing walls of the industrial arts building. That is a huge, huge opportunity for us because it will have in it, the automated plant phenotyping laboratory equipment that we talked about last time will be in these greenhouses, and there are, we think, lots of partners that want to come work with us because of what we'll have in that facility. We met with a potential partner last night who very well could be in the bottom of this with what they want to do. Now, what I can't tell you, here it is at night. I love this picture because it's going to be the beacon of Innovation Campus, that's Stan's words. The beacon of Innovation Campus at the entrance to Innovation Campus, lit up with greenhouses on the top. They've also put together a strategic plan. I won't belabor that. You also will remember that last April, I believe, Chancellor Perlman sent out an open call to faculty saying, what ideas do you have for Innovation Campus? It's just in an open way. This is what we got. This is the list of proposals that came in from various faculty groups. The ones that are underlined are from within IANR, from faculty or faculty groups that came in from IANR, or IANR with partners across campus. And I know Dan has a process that he's rolling out now to revisit how we look at these proposals and how they might get incorporated into phase 1. Now, this is the trick slide. This is a slide that I used last time, but it has a few more entries on it than I used last time of partners that we were working with in one way, shape, or form. I will tell you that the first 5 partners for Innovation Campus, I think, are on this slide. I know 2 of them are. And I know another 3, I'm very hopeful, are on this slide. So we are in advanced discussions with partners. I expect when we're together in September that we'll roll those out for you. And we'll be telling you this is what they're going to look like and what they'll be part of in the Innovation Campus. So we're excited about that. Foundation, quick update on the foundation. I used this slide last time. It has one change on it in bold. Last time I told you about 2011 looking like it would be a record year for Nebraska agriculture, and it was. $5.4 billion in net farm income in the state, exceeding the previous record in 2008 of 3.7. I think I told you that last time. $23 billion in farm receipts. What I didn't tell you is that the outlook from all of the forecasters is that the next several years will also be record-breaking, probably not record-breaking to this, but record-breaking to the previous records. So we probably are still looking at several out years that are looking very strong for agriculture in this region. Yesterday, or let me think here, what is today? Friday, Tuesday, lost track of the week. My wife and I were out at York speaking at an extension meeting in York. And on our way out of that meeting, I get a phone call. She got a phone call from her brother in Phoenix, Arizona, who had already been called about a sale of land 2 miles from their home property in Harvard, Nebraska, of $12,000 an acre for a half section. So, it's not stopped, and we don't know where it's going to stop. We're all wondering. I use the term, I don't know if it's rosy glasses or clear glasses or foggy glasses right now on this whole thing, but it certainly is something we've never seen before. And I use this slide, and I want you to see it because I'm using it a lot of places when I go out and give talks. Ag is sexy again. I really think it is. And I think we're beginning to see a turn in people's attitudes about what that means and what it's going to mean to populate agriculture in the future and the kinds of people we're going to need to populate agriculture in the future. It's having an impact on our foundation resources. I showed you this slide last time. These are the December numbers. So as of the end of December 2011, we've raised just under 90.5 million in the capital campaign of the Foundation for IANR. And you're going to automatically think, I know some of you are like Dr. Yoder, numbers people and analytical, you're automatically going to think, well, that's the 50 million Water for Food plus the 20 million Paul Engler. It's not. It's part of the Water for Food. It's part of the Engler gift. This is a lot of gifts that have come in to support efforts across the Institute, and you'll see that goal that we have is 250 million. Because I think that if we are going to do this, if we're going to be one of the very top programs in agriculture and natural resources in the world, as these two gentlemen have said we need to be, and I absolutely could not be happier about that, we're going to have more resources. And I told the ag builders of Nebraska in January that we were kidding ourselves if we didn't think that we needed more endowed chairs at this university and that we needed to raise them expeditiously. So the first 2017 number I would tell you is I hope this happens, that we can identify the key areas that we put presidential chairs into. And you notice I use the word presidential chairs. I'm not talking about $1 million chair. I'm talking about a $3.5 million chair. To be able to support that at a level that will generate not only salary support, but programmatic support for whoever holds that chair in that program. Now, don't be misperceived. I don't want to be misperceived here. That does not mean that I'm talking about raising 25 chairs and going out and hiring 25 new people. We have a lot of people on our campus that are worthy of presidential chairs, right? We have some very talented people here. So it would be a mix of new people, existing people that we build upon our strengths. And if you're a mathematician, as Dr. Yoder pointed out to me yesterday, 25 times 3.5 is not 84. It's 87 and a half. So one of those is the chair that we've already established in the wheat growers chair with Dr. Banziger. I showed you this slide a little bit last time, and I've updated it some because I want you to get the idea here. You can start thinking about presidential chairs across priorities, and they're not all on this slide. But you can start to see where those things start to filter together. The Water for Food development that we're in the beginning front end of, the rural futures that I'll talk about here in a minute, these are areas mostly that we already have strengths in, that are tied together in many ways, right? Food for health is an example of that, for the concept of being food for health. There's some things up here we don't have yet, like a Center for Red Meat Innovation that you heard me speak to a little bit last time. So we've got some building to do. The Rural Futures Institute, there's a little pull-up over here that the group that's been working on the conference for this May brought along for you to see today. This is a concept that we have out now. as a new institute across the 4 campuses focused on the rural future of the state and the region. The North American Great Plains, think of as the region, to be able to do these kind of things. And we're serious about it. We're serious enough about it that we're having a national conference in May. And we've invited in who we think the top 50 thought leaders are in this arena around the world to come dialogue with us on how to do this, on whether to do it and how to do it, and how to engage in the right things. And we've got the support now coming underneath that conference to pay for it, meaning that there are others out there that are interested in supporting efforts like this. So put that date on your calendar, May the 8th through the 10th. The registration opens next week, as I understand it, from the planning team online. All University of Nebraska people can come to this with no charge. So we're hoping that you will come to the conference. It'll be here in Lincoln at the Cornhusker, now not Marriott, Cornhusker Hotel, and that you'll be able to join us and be part of that discussion on those 3 days. And please go and register there at that website. Now we've had some people changes, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Some were announced last time, but they weren't in place. And they've taken those positions and have come on board. They are all, I like this term, you've heard me use it, I use it all the time, they're all servant leaders in what they do and why they're doing what they do to try to make the Institute better and us be able to meet our mission better. Before I show you these people, I want to make a comment here. You know, we often talk about, the stars and grants and the people that get the big dollars and people that win the big awards. But the one thing that I've noticed here is that there are a tremendous number of unsung heroes in the Institute. And we know that. We recognize that. We're here to support all of the Institute and in what we do and say to be behind that. So I point out these people because they're leadership changes, but we've got a lot of people that are high quality in our group, and I want you to all know that we appreciate it. And I want you to start right here by giving yourself a round of applause for what you do, because we think it's valuable and we appreciate what you do. So please give your colleagues a round of applause. There's a lot of us. You know that. I showed you these numbers. So about 1,600 people, 560 faculty, 400 spread across the state. Here's the changes that have occurred. Dr. Yoder is now in his position. He has been invaluable since October coming into our office. I have a life again, and I'm happy about it. So we've welcomed Ron, and I really have appreciated. He's already uncovering things that we weren't doing that have helped us to get better at what we're doing, and I'm very, very pleased to have him by my side. Archie Clutter assumed the ARD Dean role about 2 weeks after we were together last time in the Ag Research Division. Archie is over here. I think many of you have already met Archie, and has already made an impact in that office as well in thinking about how we move ARD forward. Jeff Knoll, sitting right over here, current picture, just taken last night, is assuming the role of assistant director within ARD, essentially the position that Dan Duncan had held before, and we're pleased to see Jeff stepping into that role after his work with Husker Genetics. A lot of you have been asking about what's happening with the dean and director position and extension. As I told you last time, Elbert and Beth, as the associate director and program administrator for 4-H, both will be retiring and leaving us in June. At least from the payroll leaving us, but we know that they're going to continue to support us. They've done a tremendous job over their tenure in extension, and I think all of you know that. Many of our extension colleagues are joining us from across the state remotely. Please give them a round of applause. We'll recognize them more formally later in the year, but we really appreciate their leadership. And I'm announcing today the 4 finalists for the dean position. We've had a recruitment underway for that for several months. These candidates are now scheduled for interviews during the month of March, as you'll see on the slide, basically 1 per week during the month. Susan Williams, who you will know here as our director of the Southeast District for UNL Extension. Debbie Sheely, who is the director of the production sector of NIFA. So she's the director of that particular arm of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and USDA. Dwayne Williams, who's the Associate Extension Director for the University of Wyoming, and David Harden, who you all know here as the head of the School of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. So we're very pleased with that pool of candidates and looking forward to looking through them and them looking through us over the course of March. Please engage in that process. It is very important that you engage in that process to help us select who the next leader of UNL Extension will be. I also wanted to thank these folks who are serving as leaders of their units in interim roles. So you will recall that we had the VSIP, the retirement option last summer, and there were one of our unit heads, Julie Johnson in Child, Youth, and Family Studies, retired. Rich Bischoff has assumed that role since that time. Tim Carr, who I think I saw sitting over here, has assumed the unit head role in Nutrition and Health Sciences. Marilyn Schnepp is back on the faculty, working in the faculty. Rock Gassan assumed on July 1st the Agronomy and Horticulture Department. Interim head position will be deciding fairly soon the direction that we'll be taking in naming a permanent head in that department. And then Milford Hanna, who I believe is right over here. Milford came back out of retirement to assume the role of interim head of Biological and Systems Engineering when Ron came over to the Vice Chancellor's office. So we really appreciate and thank all four of them, along with Dr. Kochman, who I don't know if he's here or not, but Steve has been in the interim role for statistics for some time, and we're now moving forward on that as well. Dr. Roberto Lenton joined us officially earlier this week. He finally got here through the snowstorm from Washington and is moving in and assuming the role of the director of the Dougherty Water for Food Institute. We're very pleased that Roberto is here. You'll have an opportunity to hear him in the next Harlan lecture a week from Monday. He's the Harlan lecturer on February the 20th and will be telling us a little more about his vision for the Water for Food Institute. Very pleased to have him here. Tom Field, who I think is back here in the audience over here on this side, joined us January 1. He and Mark Gustafson in this 6-month period, this first 6 months of the year, are co-directing the Engler program, and Tom will become the director and Engler chair of that program on July 1. So Tom, welcome. We're very pleased to have you here working with Mark. This is a new one. So this is the first formal announcement of this. Dr. Brian Larkin will be joining us as the Associate Vice Chancellor for the Life Sciences, reporting directly to Ellen Weisinger and to me in the role of coordinating the faculty of the Life Sciences. Many of you will remember Brian. He's not new to campus. He was here several years ago, as I understand it, through some of the life sciences discussions. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences, coming from the University of Arizona, Nebraska native, grew up in the York, Chester, kind of between those two towns in the state, and we're very pleased to have Brian coming. There's been a group of the administrators, Dr. Dean Waller, I think, Archie from ARD, Valerie Forbes from SBS, Dave Manderscheid from Arts and Sciences, Ellen and I, and Deb Hammernick from Prim's office traveled to Tucson and met with Brian in November to talk about how we would see this unfolding. We're very excited for him to be coming. He is the person that I mentioned that we had talked to about a conversation with President Obama. He's one of the 12 that is going to sit in that meeting with President Obama next week. We have added 19 new faculty since the beginning of the fiscal year. This is the list. You can see where they're spread across various units, both here on campus and outstate. We've been pleased with those searches and to be able to bring those new faculty onto our ranks. And in the interest of getting faster on slides, I'm going to move through some of these fast. This is Jessica Shoemaker. And this is a great story about entrepreneurism. And I put it in here specifically to make a point. One of the things that I get really kind of, frustrated is not the right word, but edgy. Is that fair, Alan? Edgy is the right word. about is how difficult it is to be nimble in our hiring processes. And this is an example of where we defied all the norms. This is a lawyer. Her name is Jessica Shoemaker. She's in a law firm in Denver, Colorado. She was number one in her law class at the University of Wisconsin. She grew up in Iowa. Her father is a plant geneticist with USDA in Iowa, at Iowa State. And she had interest in coming onto a College of Law faculty where her interest is in land use policy and rural issues around land use policy. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers tell me that those people are very rare, very, very rare in the legal field. Dr. Poser, the dean of the law school, came upon her resume amongst all those that have been posted nationally for law schools to look at in kind of pre-screening process. And she called me up the Friday before the Ohio State football game, I distinctly remember it, called me up and said, "Ronnie, I need to see you today." And I had no idea what it was about. I thought trouble's brewing somewhere. But she came over to my office at the end of the day and she was carrying this resume. She was carrying Jessica's resume. And she said, "Take a look at this. This fits so well into things the Institute is talking about, the Rural Futures Institute is talking about, and this is a real find, I think, in terms of the College of Law faculty." Had Harvey look at it the next day. He said, "You got to hire this person. She's really rare." We flew out to meet her for dinner the following Wednesday. Dean Poser and I did. And we had a conversation to find out about her. And as many of you will know, she came to campus in October, or late October, just a few weeks later, to look at us and us to look at her. She signed last week. And she's coming to the College of Law as a faculty member working jointly with us. We've got to find ways to be more like that within the norms of wanting to hire the very best people. And I'm very, very pleased that Jessica, and I think that's her husband, that's who I could find online that was with her. Disclaimer. Okay. We also are recruiting a number of administrative positions. The IANR director position is open under recruitment currently. The BSE department head that Milford's serving in interim is open. The statistics chair position we're about to open and recruit for that position. Director of global engagement that I mentioned to you in September is about to close. Dr. Yoder's leading that search along with Tom Farrell, who's back here in the back from the system. And we've got a pool of very good candidates, we think, for that search to help us on the global front. The Nebraska Water Center has now become an official part of the Water for Food Institute. Several of you in that arena have heard me talk about that. Swat Ermock is now the interim director of the Nebraska Water Center, effective just last month. Bruce Dvorak, who had been the Water Center director, is now interim chair of mechanical engineering, civil engineering. And SWAT's serving as interim, and we've opened the search for that permanent position as the director of the Water Center. And then Roberto will be hiring a Water for Food Institute research director and policy director. Those positions are about to go out. So a lot of those positions are moving forward. These are the current recruitments that we have underway in IANR. And there was 19 of them. There's no magic there between 19 last year and 19 this year, but there's 19 positions currently under recruitment, including a set of cluster hires there at the bottom in Water for Food that we're part way through with 2 of those having offers extended from them. Now, this is what happens when you ask the crew in my office to take a picture. So you know Janet and Bird and Linda. Zanetta Hahn is our new person in our office here on the front. Please get to know Zanetta, just started with us this past month. We've been through a little bit of a construction process in Ag Hall that started in August, and Linda told me we wouldn't be done till May, and I said we'd be done in Thanksgiving, and then I adjusted that to Christmas and then January, and then you get the picture. Linda's winning. So they've been real saints through the process. My point here in this slide is we have a tremendous staff in the Institute, a tremendous set of staff people across the Institute, and we underappreciate them, and we need to overappreciate them. So please give all of our staff people across all of the Institute a big round of applause for what they do every day for us. Now here's the point where the clicker gets heavy. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the 2025 process and where we are in the recommendations that were brought forward from that we reported to you in September. If you recall, there were 51 recommendations that emerged from the steering committees and the process that we had this time last year, with reports coming to us in June, and then the leadership team of the Institute sorted through those in a retreat in July and developed plans for how we would move those forward, where 30 of those were things we should be able to move forward in short time. Another 10 were ones that we needed to do some work to look at how we would do that and remove some roadblocks, and another 11 that required some university discussion, things that were really beyond just IANR that we needed to be discussing with our counterparts across campus. So here's where we are. I mentioned to you that we'd started a Deans and Unit Heads group working together as a team, meeting monthly. We have done that monthly since the end of August, working around the development of these policies and how we move forward. So that team has been quite active. We've been pleased with the way that it's gelled. I'm going to take these by buckets, and you'll see that the slides are designed where we have completed a recommendation. It's done. It's being done on a daily basis. We're still working on progress with some of them, and some of them we have left to tackle, if you will, moving forward. So in terms of review, strong human capital and faculty and staff review is the first category. Done is we changed the EARFA deadline, as you know. That went into effect this current evaluation cycle. We're trying to reduce the amount of time required for feedback. The unit heads are in the midst of that currently, as you know. Changing the content of the EARFA submission has been tweaked some to try to simplify it. We'll continue to move down that path as we move forward. In progress in that area, while we had a faculty task force who spent time looking at whether we should revise the rating system that we use for annual evaluation and whether we should standardize that across units and how it's applied, if there was a way we could standardize it. We also have had some discussion about developing a revised frequency of evaluation for post-tenure faculty. So should we evaluate full professors every year? Or should we evaluate full professors every 3 years? Or have some kind of revised process. So these are still being worked on by that unit heads group. We're taking it back up in our March meeting so that by the turn of the next cycle, we have these decisions made for how that will get implemented. Done, the recognition of the need for flexibility and individual apportionment. And I think this is particularly of concern on the teaching appointments for a number of our faculty relative to whether they are reflecting their teaching load. And we're looking at that, making sure there's a way for that to be adjusted in the units that's not cumbersome. In progress, revising and revamping the staff evaluation process. Alan's leading that effort. And we still have some work to do on the mentoring implementation that we recommended out of that process. Acquiring human talent, the next bucket. Encouraging and paving a way for cluster hires. Now this says done. I will tell you it's not perfected. Okay? It's done. We are in the process of making a water cluster hire, and we've learned a lot of things in that process. So there's a lot of perfecting of this process to happen yet. And there's some others that are now will emerge, I predict, from the process we're going through this spring and summer to figure out the next set of positions. In progress, more participative leadership by unit heads in position and resources allocation. I'm going to speak to this at more length here in a few minutes. So that's certainly in progress. Faculty hiring package, develop pre-interviews. This is something we've got to get right. We've got to get it right. Because right now what we do is we advertise a position and we say what we want in the person and what the training needed and the skill set needed, and we bet on the come in what it's going to take to resource them. So we've got to get this right. We've got to have the packages figured out ahead of time when we go into those searches, and we're certainly working on a way to do that. Providing more opportunities for faculty for administrative development. A lot of people tell me they're not sure they want that, but we'll leave it at that. No, we do need to find ways to succession plan people into administrative roles. To do, add risk-taking and entrepreneurship to position descriptions. I had a group in my office this morning, or this was a discussion about how we're doing in that arena and how we might think about it moving forward. Lead dean assigned for each search. This will happen coming out of the resource allocation process we go through this spring and summer. Institutionalizing former IANR new faculty and staff. Our target is to start doing that this fall with our new faculty and staff. Establishing bridge funding with the Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development. That is done. In progress, developing a salary pool for equity adjustments. This is an area that's going to sort out of that resource allocation, if you will, process, so we have a pool to work from there, and I know there's certain units in the Institute who have pressed this and are really concerned about this happening. Developing coordinated and systematic IANR awards committee. This is in process and starting to happen. Dick Fleming for years has done a wonderful job for us, but if you have heard Prim and you've heard Ellen talk about the university goals, they are honing in on this. And they want us to be able to elevate even higher level of awards across campus. We do great in this already, and we have opportunities that are out there ahead of us. To do, fully implementing NU value system to allow in-job promotion and tenure and promotion in rank, making the staff HR system more closely resemble those outside the university. Alan's been thinking a lot about this. He must be reading a lot about it too, because he's bringing a lot of that thinking into our discussion about how do we do that? How do we really change the way we think to resemble the outside world, not completely, but more than we do currently. Better business operations done, NU grant accepting and processing internal grants, that's done. Dave Jackson sent out a notice yesterday on another set of those referring to that's in place. In progress, moving to electronic travel processing, blanket travel authorizations. We gave Jeff Bassford considerable more resources to be able to make these things happen. And I think I showed you a slide of that last time of the finance and personnel group, bringing in additional bodies to really help make some of these things happen. Using people admin to streamline faculty and staff hiring, position description changes and reclasses, streamlining PAF approval to only those that have budgetary authority. We've got to start on that. We started doing that internally at the administrative levels. Now we need to filter it further down. Developing an Office of Sponsored Programs user form needs to occur yet. Clarifying financial interactions with businesses through the foundation or Office of Sponsored Programs is in progress. There were several of us that had a meeting around some of the subjects related to this morning downtown, specific aspects of this. Automating time entry in SAP, improving grant submission process, reviewing policies for potential elimination or simplification, in particular with facilities. This one's going to take some work for us to really get our arms around it. Done, improving SAP data interfaces and approval rating flexibility. We've had a group working on external communications, and the last couple of slides I'll show you later on will show you the result of that work, where we've been thinking about how we streamline our communications down to a single IANR publication twice per year. So we have a fall publication and a spring publication. The first one of those will roll out this spring. Will come out in April as the new IANR public face, if you will. Included in that, we hope to have our new brand and communications tagline that will go with it, as you'll see here in a little bit. So Jill Brown and Mark Balschweid and many folks, Judy Nelson, have been involved in working with that group and have done great work along with our colleagues in Ed Media. On ag literacy, ag and food literacy, there's a bunch of slides here. I'm just going to make the point. I'm going to move through them fairly quickly. Dean Waller, no, not because it's not important, but because I'm looking at 25 after 3. So yeah, the ag literacy issue done. There was a winter workshop here in this room where we were developing student learning outcomes for food, energy, and water with a panel discussion on water. Tiffany and John led that process. An RFP for introductory level A certified courses went out, and 5 proposals have been funded from that, where the first courses we hope will be available spring of 2013. There is a workshop in March to continue to plan for integration into the UNL curriculum around this issue, and the Ag and Natural Resource 103 course is in progress for ACE certification. Food, energy, and water minor yet out there to address in this arena. On the pre-K through 12th grade, so go think back to the secondary school system, if you will, and primary school system in terms of incorporating ag literacy. By the way, if you have noticed the press, one of our state senators, Kate Sullivan, has introduced a bill in the legislature currently around this issue and around whether we need to be doing more in the school system around ag and food literacy. And the bill is actually commissioning a study, a legislative study to look at that in the system. So done. Programs for K through 12 educators, the Soybean in the Classroom program has been quite successful. Over 350 Lincoln Public School K through 2 classrooms are using that now as a plant model system. Tiffany and Hing Moss and John Peterson in particular have been the leaders of that effort. CASNR courses available for pre and in-service teachers through those departments are done. Collaboration amongst CASNR, CEHS, and the Northeast Research and Extension Center is done. So we're moving forward, I think, rapidly and well, Steve and Dean Waller, in this area. In progress on the pre-K through 12 science instruction, Ag and Natural Resources Summit being planned to engage stakeholders in this arena. Food, energy, and water education exhibit at the Lincoln Children's Zoo is in progress. To do, additional programs to be developed, integration of ag and natural resource systems as models for pre-K through 12 science education, and then there is a plan that's been led by Susan Williams, one of the candidates for the dean's position you heard earlier, around the development of a global agriculture, food, and environment education center at Meade, at the ARDC. And there's quite elaborate planning that has gone into that process that we're evaluating how we might be able to support it. Now, one thing I want to add, I moved through those very quickly on ag and food literacy, is in our hiring plans, this is an example of an area in our hiring plans, in teaching and extension in particular, that we have begun to address this science education issue. So we have brought people to campus, added people to our ranks to work in this arena in extension and teaching. And I'm really pleased about that. Some of those new faculty you saw in an earlier slide are in this arena. We have other new faculty we're recruiting in this arena that will help us, and my hat's off to the group for moving in that direction. On research, establishing team-based competitive hatch projects, done. To do, developing a multidisciplinary Monday program where we bring groups together on Mondays. This was one of the ideas out of 2025 that we have yet to develop. Public networking, IANR business development person that Archie's got to think about in his shop is on their plate. In progress, highlighting and developing partnerships with farmers and ranchers. This one's a little hard to put in a done category or in an in progress category because we're really doing it all the time. We really have those kinds of opportunities across the state that we are doing on a routine basis. Institutionalizing competitive team industry and pilot grant programs. We certainly have set up several. Now, the word institutionalize is the piece of that you've got to repeat them before they become institutionalized, and they're all still relatively new in their rollout, including a new one that we're going to announce on the Rural Futures concept at the conference in May. Would be another one of these kind of interdisciplinary institutional awards programs. Awarding hatch multi-state funds on a competitive basis, that's a hairy one. We know that's a hairy one because you can't just do it. You can't just turn the light on and turn the light off, or turn the light off and turn the light on, I guess is a better way of saying that. But you can't just do it overnight because it's trails over those projects spread out over a time horizon. So we're considering how we do that. Strategic partnering, the meeting we had this morning involved this one. developing consistent, transparent processes around IP, royalty, licenses, the whole conflict of interest. You will have noticed on UNL today, conflict of interest policy being rolled out and readdressed under some new guidelines. And this is an area that we've got to pay careful attention to. We have to be able to show the benefit of those dollars coming back to the programs that are generating those dollars in a very transparent way to support what we're doing. I'm going to click forward because I've got to get to these. Now, I told you that I wanted you to really think about the next few months. This is why we've got to think about the next few months. You know these goals. The Chancellor articulated them in September in his State of the University address. 25,000 to 30,000 students, 5,000 students in 5 to 6 years. Going from a 63 to 64% 6-year graduation rate to 70% university-wide. Increasing research expenditures from $191 million in 2011 to $300 million. Research expenditures, not contracts, what was actually spent in research expenditures. And having Innovation Campus Phase 1 complete. Now here's the key to this slide. That's the key. I got a really interesting email yesterday when we sent out or Wednesday, when we sent out the reminder about this meeting. And when I first got it, I thought, I don't know whether to get mad at this or whether to really think about it. It's from a faculty member in the Institute. And the faculty member said, I'm not sure I buy into the goals. And I'm not sure I buy into the goals because we want to get bigger. We want more. This Big Ten stuff, we got to get bigger to compete in the Big Ten. And we do. But does that mean we're going to get bigger and have to do more without the resources to be able to do it in a quality way? Fair question, right? Fair enough question. So initially I got, oh geez, that's a real downer. And then I thought about it overnight. She's right. She's pointing out a real issue that we have to pay attention to. That's how we're paying attention to it, that. We've got to think about that right. Where do those positions go? How do they support the increased growth that we have and the increased support of our students and our research programs? I told you in September that we want to get bigger in the Institute, and I think we can and we will. And throughout these goals, I'm not sure they're perfect. I'm not sure in particular this one's the one that worries me. The undergraduate one doesn't worry me that much because I think we're on that trend already, Dean Waller. I think we can achieve that as we continue to build our programs undergraduate. This is a big goal to increase the graduate program by that size. And I know that. I recognize that. But those are the goals that we've thrown out there. I told you in September we didn't know what this number was. Remember, we talked about 6-year graduation rates, and I said we have a paucity of data, and we're not really sure what they are across campus. All we know is the 63.8% for UNL. We do know now what they are by colleges, and Kasner's is 77.6% in the most recent cohort of students, highest in the university across all colleges by a margin. So congratulate yourself on that for what you're doing to support the retention and graduation of our students. That does not mean that we can't continue to improve and continue to move that bar up. I also always try to make sure you remember and recall that when we say a 6-year graduation rate, that does not mean the number of the students that came to UNL as an incoming freshman or incoming student that graduated with a BS degree somewhere. It means from UNL. So the actual number here is higher than 78%, realize that obtain a college degree, whether they obtain it here or not, is the 78%. I also mentioned our research goals, where if we're going to go to $191 billion from $61.3 million of our portion of that currently, about 32% of that currently, we have some huge growth rates ahead of us. This year we're doing well. If we end up as high at the end of the year as we currently are, we're going to have made a big dent in this number. but we've got ground that we need to cover in order to get there. Here's the take-home message. The next, what are we at? Middle of February? So the next 5 months is when the rubber's going to hit the road in terms of us making decisions about how we do this. Decisions going into that 5-year period. So that deans and unit heads group that I've referred to earlier, their charge is getting their arms around this and getting their arms around where the positions need to be, where the positions need to grow, where we need to resource in units in order to meet these goals that we have ahead of us. And we've begun to engage the units. Dr. Yoder's been visiting in the last couple of weeks around the various units in the Institute to begin that process and begin gathering that data from the units, from the faculty in the units. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of engaging in this process. We want you to engage in this process to determine with the best informed way how we make these resource decisions moving forward. That will culminate in our next retreat, which is July 24th and 25th. That's the subject of the retreat, is how we resource the plan moving into these 5 years of where we put those resources. And I expect us to be having a substantial portion of those resources. If we have 166 new positions on campus, I expect the Institute to have 35 to 40%, if at a minimum, of those positions. So you can begin to kind of think about what the challenge is that we have ahead of us. We have asked your units over the coming few weeks to address these questions. We know what the goals are at the university level. We've asked you to address if we're going to increase our student enrollment in CASNR, or not in the Institute, across all areas of study to 4,200, undergraduate, graduate, and professional programs combined. What does that mean for your unit? And how would you resource needing to get that done? Increasing research expenditures, same story. What does that mean for your unit to achieve that rate of growth across the board? We're not asking the units in these discussions to give us proportional answers. That's not what we're asking. We're not saying we've got to increase by 8% and your portion of that is this much. So how much will you be increasing? What we're asking is, what do you think your unit's growth should be based on where you are and where you think the opportunities are? Same with Innovation Campus, the same with Extension and generating that knowledge out in outreach. This is that schedule culminating in July 24th and 25th with the retreat. So we've asked for that feedback to come to us by middle of March, essentially spring break time of the year, where we can have an iterative process afterwards between that group of the deans and the unit heads to get our plans in place to be coming to the table in July. So please engage in that process within your units. Only point I'm going to make out of this slide is the enrollment point. Going from 3,000 to 4,200 sounds phenomenal, and I know it's a big number. But this is the growth CASNR has been on since 2003. This side of the slide is the university. This left-hand side, this is CASNR. And the growth rate that CASNR has had at the undergraduate level for sure says that those undergraduate numbers are very achievable and that we have those opportunities. So what Dean Waller and his group has done has given each of the units a target. So we've gone through as part of this iterative process, and based on where we think the opportunities are, you'll notice these are not proportional. There's not a 1 point whatever times whatever the number was. What those targets might look like. And there's some that are a lot bigger than others, just like I hinted they might be last September. And that's a starting point for the discussion in the units. What is that going to look like for your unit? Is that achievable for your unit? What are the resources going to be required for your unit? What are we going to have to do not only in Nebraska, or a better way I should say that, what are we going to have to do in Nebraska, along with what we're going to have to do outstate in order to achieve those goals. Several of you have heard me say, I've said it in public a lot the last few months, we are not recruiting the way we should be recruiting in Nebraska. We are losing too many students in Nebraska to other institutions. And we've got to reverse it. We've got to figure out what to do about that. So you heard what I said, in-state, we have to do in-state and out-of-state and pay attention to be able to make those things happen, along with our help in admissions and recruitment. Now, I'm going to make a few concluding remarks. You've been very patient. I mentioned global programs and engaging further globally. Last time, you've already heard me say we're in the end of the process, beginning to look for that Director of Global Engagement for the Institute. These are the key target areas. Here's where we are. We are already engaged in either places that have programs that we exist in these arenas, or we're negotiating them right now. And this is just the big ones. There's a lot of other ones that you can't show as well. So we're in Brazil very heavily and are going to get heavier in Brazil. We're in India. We're in China in multiple places now with another team going back in about 2 weeks. Dr. Yoder and several of the unit heads are involved in, along with the Chancellor. We're in several parts of Africa. Next Thursday, several of us are going to Washington to sign an agreement that we've been working on for a long time with USAID. So Raj Shah is signing a memorandum of understanding with the University of Nebraska, which is a rare thing to have a relationship with USAID, establishing our efforts very heavily in the initial phase, focused right here in the Middle East and North Africa in water. These are great developments that we're seeing happen, and a lot of people have worked very hard to make them happen. Elbert's group, for example, has engaged very heavily with DOD and with our people in Afghanistan in ADT teams in rebuilding Afghanistan. You get the idea. There's a lot of things happening here that we're very, very excited about. These are our Brazilians. There are 25 of them who came here in January or who are enrolled as UNL undergraduates in the front end of the Brazilian program of Science Without Borders. We expect 100 of these students to be here in the fall. We are the biggest university in this program, fivefold in the U.S. currently. Just started. This is the first group of students that came. The Brazilian government's sending 70,000 of them abroad the next 3 years. Very excited about that. So there's the group. A few weeks ago, JB had them at his home, and they gave him a nice Brazilian flag. Some of you have these students in some of your classes. About half of them, a little less than half of them are ag, the other half are engineering, roughly, and they're experiencing, unfortunately, bed bugs. Anyway, this is the faculty group that several of you in the room were involved in at the University of Sao Paulo Asaki at Piracicaba, Brazil, in Sao Paulo State. Their faculty will be coming to us this summer to begin really fleshing out a memorandum of agreement with the two universities around bioenergy, around bread meat innovation, around plant science innovation, around water, around food science. All of those areas. And we're very, very pleased about that development. It was a great group that was there in December with them. Now, I just want to close with just a couple of slides about building community. About building community amongst the Institute, amongst our faculty, amongst our staff, amongst our stakeholders. We have a great community already, but there's ways that we can enhance it. And we're trying to do that, trying to help do that every day. Here's some things that are downstream for us that we didn't have the opportunity to do over a long period of time. The East Campus Rec, the rendering of that's going to happen here in the next period of time. It's exciting to see building happen on the campus. This is the union. We're engaging with the folks that manage the union. We're engaging with dining services and housing to talk about how the union can become more of an anchor like it used to be, and how we can find a way for it to be a gathering place like it used to be. And I think that's important, because if you remember, you used to do a lot of meetings right over there. And we don't have many meetings over there anymore. It's harder to do that in the union. We're trying to figure that out, figure out how we make that work. It may take some time, but we're going to figure out how to anchor those kind of facilities back here on campus. This is a rendering of the AGR house that'll start construction across Holdridge here on the south side, here not too long away. So a completely new facility there, and there are plans under development for across the block from it for there to be retail and housing space built in a 2-block area. That's exciting. Those are things that help build additional community around the campus, and we're excited about that. Community chats, the opportunity to have these discussions. This has been a long one, but the opportunity for you to talk to us about what we're doing. The next one of these is March the 8th that the liaison committee is putting on. You'll see notices about that. Please engage in those and come and ask questions or tell us thoughts on what you see that's not working or what we can do better. And appreciate the liaison committee's leadership in that. Liaison committees also is getting the Rhodes Scholar Tour set for May 21st through the 23rd this year for new faculty in the Institute. We have invited new faculty from City Campus to join us this time, along with some administrators from City Campus to join us to understand the state better, understand the place that they have come to better, and understand the relationships that we have out there. So please encourage those new faculty to come join us for what will be a whiz-bang trip across the state of Nebraska that Jill tells me is all perfect. The Harlan lectures, been tremendously pleased with the rollout of this over the course of the time since September. So we've seen Professor Swaminathan and Steve Banziger and Senator Kerry and Stuart Brand, who created quite a bit of email on my email traffic, who brought some interesting and provocative thoughts to us. Roberto Lenton, I mentioned earlier, here in about a week for our next Harlan lecturer. Jay Kiesling from UC Berkeley, algal biofuels expert from one of the top people in the world, runs a very large biofuels institute at UC Berkeley, Nebraska native, grew up close to that 12,000 an acre ground that I just told you about. We're planning to have as a May lecturer, hoping to have it in concert with the Rural Futures Conference. So he'll be part of that Rural Futures Conference as well. And I'm announcing today that on September the 28th, we will have a nationally televised event at the Lead Center. We think it's at the Lead Center, we're negotiating with them. But here in the university, of 4 former secretaries of agriculture, and you see their names there on the screen, led by Clayton Yoder and Mike Johans, 2 Nebraska former secretaries, and Dan Glickman and Dan Veneman will join them. And we'll have a conversation about the future of the land-grant mission. What does the land-grant mission mean moving forward in the next 150 years? What that's going to look like. That'll be televised nationally by RFD TV. They gave us that news yesterday, and we're very excited about that, to be able to get our name out, if you will, across the airwaves. I've got a committee. This is my next to last slide. It started work earlier this week. David Jackson and Tiffany Hing-Moss are leading a team of our associate deans, along with several others who are working with them, around planning a full week celebration the last week of September for the 150th anniversary of the Morrill Act and of the land-grant university system. We'll have a special set of events each day of that week. It also is homecoming week for the university. The Wisconsin football game is that Saturday. A sister land-grant university of some prominence, as you know, will be joining us that week. And the Ag Secretary panel will be that Friday. So we're very excited about that, engage in that. We also are going to be honoring, as a side event to that, the 4 former secretaries of agriculture from Nebraska. So Clayton Yoder, Mike Johans, Clifford Harden, and J. Sterling Morton, with an honoring of their presence on campus. We'll be placing an honorary thing about them here on campus, spread across the campus. So we're very, very pleased about that. So look forward to those. These are the last 2 slides I've got for you. These are the narrowed down brands and taglines that team has put together. working since September. They're a little hard to see. The Liaison Committee has also been testing these out for us amongst people across the state and in the Institute. We don't have the final pick made yet. We're collecting data on what the responses are to them, but you'll see a theme there. Food, fuel, water, communities is certainly a theme, and you've been hearing that theme for some time. But there's a theme there about the future and about growth and about a successful future. That's really what we're about. So I just want to close today by thanking every one of you for what you do in this mission and for what we're about. I don't know if this will be the one, it's just one I like. Don't know if that'll be the one or not, but I like it. But thank you for what you're doing to contribute to this, because every one of you are in it. Every one of you are in it, no matter what your discipline is, no matter what your field of study is, you're all reflected here. And that's why I like it, is it reflects everything that we do. So thank you very much for what you do. I really appreciate your patience. I know it's been a long 102 slides. Thank you very much. Maybe 5 minutes. If there are any burning questions, we can address them. Please feel free to go. I know people have schedules to keep. But if there are questions we can address either from online or from the audience, I'll be glad to do it.